All right, welcome back to another podcast. My name is Logan Quinn, and as always, I am your teacher and mentor today. Last day, and in the last podcast, I gave you the grassroots basics to psychotherapy, which in that podcast, I talked about the mechanisms behind how parts of ourselves get castrated off from our conscious mind and put into our subconscious when it is not welcome by our guardians or our parents or social structures as children. Now, psychological castrations or schisms can happen at any point in our lives, whether we are children or adults. And after we castrate those parts of ourselves off, this is what I was talking about in the last video, and I'll give you a brief summary, those parts of ourselves don't stop existing. Whether we are conscious of those parts or not, they still act out in certain ways in our character. Now, they're not integrated into our normal human being, so they don't come out in genuine ways. Rather, most of the time, once that castration is put into the subconscious, you'll start finding people in the world to play out that role for you, and that's called projection. That part of ourselves was preventing us from receiving the love that we wanted from loved ones, our guardians, our parents, society, our understanding or feeling about God and our cosmic father figures or mother figures. And if anything, any part of ourselves prevents us from receiving that love, we will resent that part of ourselves and hate it. And that's why we start to hate the people that we find in our lives to play out those roles. There's another part to this that I didn't mention in the last video, which revolves around when we project this on other people, we're not actually just attracting other people in our lives to play out this role. Those people may have always been there, but based off of what we do not accept in ourselves, we'll start noticing it more in other people. It isn't always that we're just finding people and finding circumstances to play that role for us, but rather we as individuals pick up on that pattern more and it bothers us more. So it's not always a matter of your subconscious makes you find these people more. It just happens to notice it more, and that pisses us off, and then that causes us to try and resolve this issue interpersonally. Now, today's topic is going to be revolving around how to reintegrate these parts of ourselves. And I think the title of this video will be something to the effect of retrieving the child by loving the devil. And the reason why I mention this is that the devil is a metaphor for the parts of ourselves that we take on, whether from other people's voices telling us we shouldn't be this or we shouldn't be that. Just like I said, you shouldn't cry in the last video was an example. Well, you take on that person's voice and they become a sub-self within you. They become an introjected voice. And those introjected voices in most therapy modalities are called devils. They are devilish. They are castrating. They are evil. They cut a part of yourself off from your connection to your greater whole. And that's why we find that in a lot of religions we refer to the devil as the part of us that cuts us off from God, that pulls us away from God figures or to get to heaven. So the connection there is very similar. Whether or not it's a chicken or the egg scenario doesn't really matter. The reality of it is that this devilish behavior lives within us when we cut off parts of ourselves. So it's not just a matter of rehabbing the body and allowing ourselves, once we have the ability to move our muscles spontaneously, to then go into a situation that reminds us of that original wounding. And then, immediately you're going to reorganize your psyche into its original format. That's not how it works. That is one step in the process, but I didn't mention in the last video, there is resistance because you now have this new part of yourself in you, a devil, a new sub-self. That sub-self will always be resistant to you reintegrating that part of yourself. The devils within you act as prison guards, essentially, and they will put the child into the subconscious mind and into its cell and lock him or her in there. And if you try and sneak past this devil to retrieve the inner child from the subconscious mind, it's not that simple. These devils are too strong, they're too clever for us to just try and sneak past and retrieve ourselves from them. It's not possible to live out this like idealistic idea of therapy where you can just, rehab your physical body and boom, you have access to that part of yourself again, that inner child that was broken from your conscious mind. There is a part of you that exists now that actually doesn't want you to live as a whole unit, an integrated unit. And I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the reason why is that this devil understands and fears that you will not receive the love you need in the world if this part of yourself, this inner child, shows itself to other people. That's the reason why I got locked away in the first place. So you have to live with these devils, and the only way to retrieve that inner child from the prison of that devil is to get to know the devil. You need to be brave enough in your therapy to honor the resistance, that is, honor the devil. Because he or she is not going to just give up your inner child, that part of your inner child. They're there to protect you from not receiving the love that you were so wanting in your childhood. So I'm going to sidetrack to a little bit of a tangent here, and we'll come back to this main conversation in a second. In the previous video, I mentioned how with a significant psychological schism, which all of us have in varying degrees, you will not actually comprehend or know what part of you got cut off. You no longer remember. There's an amnesia around the wounding. So actually the only way to know what parts of you may be missing from your integrated human unit, your integrated psyche, is to get to know your daily triggers. And that is, get to know the people in your life that piss you off, that you start dealing and talking with a therapist or with yourself or with friends or in a men's group or a women's group about the things that you hate the most in life in other people. And that's the first secret, is once you start putting a voice to the things you hate, you're actually starting to tune into what those devils, those prison guards, have to say. And each cell in the prison has its own devil. And each devil has its own specific things that it hates. And once you know what that devil hates, you get a sense of what lays behind those bars. Who is locked in there? Because that devil hates the person that's locked in there. So the more we get to know these devils, the better sense we get as to what part of ourselves got cut off and who's laying underneath there. The more we talk about it and the more we work these things out as we do the physical rehabilitation and talking about our daily triggers with people, you'll start to connect the puzzle pieces together on one particular devil or multiple. Let's just use the example of one scenario, one devil and one inner child that has been locked away. The more you explore this in therapy, know your daily triggers, and rehab your body, you'll start to realize whose voice that devil represents. Who in your past, in your upbringing, in your childhood, could have been that voice for you. I'll use an example that I have from my own childhood. And whether this is real in reality or not, or was my own brain sorting things out for itself, I have a devil inside me called the Pharaoh, or the Pharaoh-S. I call him that because I'm Egyptian, and his job is to keep the rest of me working like a hound. He keeps the other parts of me enslaved. And unfortunately, and I love my mom, but my mom is very business oriented. She loves to get stuff done. And that part of me, that pharaoh, was interjected so that I could receive the love of my mother. If I was productive enough, if I was a good boy enough, if I kept busy and did the things that a man does, I would receive her love. So, as I got to know what the Pharaoh devil wanted me to do with my life, I understood that having a devil Pharaoh inside me implies slaves. And the slaves don't want to work, they want to live peacefully, they don't want to have to get shit done. So that's the thing. As I got to know that I have this inner Pharaoh, I could listen to it, hear what it had to say, channel it in exercises and therapy that would move my muscles in aggressive ways. So I would control, I would go through a psychodrama. I would say grab a pillow and twist it like I'm choking somebody out, forcing them to do work, and say, you get back to fucking work right now. Or whatever the words might be that come up in that moment that feel right with the aggression. I could start listening to that devil and say, that kind of sounds like mom, or that kind of sounds like dad, or that sounds like my sensei. And that's the start of the process. You start connecting the devil with the equivalent counter to that, the yin and yang elements. The devil implies a direct opposite that it counters. So what part of myself is opposite to a controlling nature? It's a free-loving, maybe goofy, maybe clumsy part of myself that if I allowed that clumsy part of myself to be shown to the world, I may not get the love that I wanted. So let's come back to our main conversation. There are a few ways for us to really go through this therapeutic process and retrieve our inner child from the devil. The first step is to listen to your triggers. By listening to your triggers, you go to step 2. You get to know that devil, and you start to understand who that voice may have been in your childhood. Number 3 is that you start honoring or exercising that devil. and if you've done enough therapy like this, you'll know that shadow work or psychotherapy work with the devils basically exercises these devils out to get your body doing exactly what that devil wants, whether it's punching a pillow in or strangling a pillow as if you want to strangle that part of yourself that's in the prison, saying, I hate you, you won't let us get the love that we want. You need to honor that devil so that it can fall asleep. And classically, if you look at mythology, a lot of the time when the hero enters the cave in the final challenges of the story, there's usually a dragon. And to overcome the dragon, sometimes you need to get to know the dragon and speak to it and know its weaknesses and find a chink in its armor. Or at other times in other stories, you need to play a ballad on this instrument, on this harp, to get it to fall asleep. Both scenarios is you're trying to lure the devil, the evil force, the enemy, into a sense of comfort and honor it and make it feel your love. And without this loving behavior with your devils, they will not give up the struggle and they will not let you retrieve your inner child. So that is step 3. You need to honor the devil, let it do what it wants and act it out in a safe environment, not in your life, but at home. And it will start to let its guard down once it feels that you honor it, you respect it, and love it for the protection that it gave you and what it was intending to do in your life. A devil only comes up in your psyche to try and ensure that you get the love that you want or protect you from other people who will hurt you. Step number 4 is once your devil falls asleep after feeling honored, your child will kind of yell out from inside the prison. You'll start hearing from far away. Sometimes it'll start very quietly in your mind. You'll start hearing what the child has to say. But often the feeling is, after you give up the resistance, after you give up holding your musculature tight, that is, your musculature was playing out the role of the devil, once you let that down and your muscles can relax, more spontaneous movement comes up that is genuine. And what underlies that, the genuine movement, the spontaneity, is your natural behavior. And your natural behavior is your inner child. So often after we do an angry exercise and release our aggression, we will feel pain and start to cry, and you'll get a wave of remembrance, of recollection of old memories. Your amnesia falls behind because you don't have to be afraid of this memory anymore, so it comes back and you're flooded with visions, and you see what happened to you as a kid, and you start feeling the pain of that situation again, and you sob. You feel that pain of the child and how he or she wanted to be loved and welcomed in the world. And that is the first step to healing. Once you can have access to that inner child and allow it to move your body and feel spontaneous emotions again, whatever those emotions are, whether it's sexual emotions that you want to be physical, or you need to be clumsy and cry and not, be a well put together human being, once you can let yourself be that in the safety of your own home, you can start parenting it. So you don't have to deny that part of yourself. And in the therapy process, you'll start by parenting that voice. You'll hug a pillow and rock it side to side like a little infant and say, "Shh, it's okay. It's okay. I see the pain. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect you. It's going to be okay." And you might hold it up to your cheek and really feel connected to that part of yourself, your inner child, and say, "I'm not going to leave you again." And this process will need to go on for months and months and months before the devil allows the prison cell to be left open and for your inner child to walk in and out. And this process will need to go on for months and months before your inner adult knows that it needs to show up for your inner child and protect it and honor it. And this will go on for months and months because your inner child needs to know that it's welcomed in the world again, that it will not be shamed or denied or put down, so it feels safe to walk out of the cell and come back to the world. And once this is comfortable enough at home or in therapy or in group, you'll notice that in your life you have access to these new feelings with people. And when people try and stomp on that part of you again, just like you had your original wound happen, your inner adult, the part of you that is godly, the part of you that is Christ-like or an ideal father figure or mother figure, will stand up and say, "Hey, that hurts my feelings. I don't feel safe when you say that. So I'm not going to welcome that behavior." Or you can say it in a different way, but you need to know that affects me in ways that I am not welcoming. And that is putting up a safe boundary and not having to cut off that part of yourself again and use your devils. Now, at the same time, in extreme circumstances, when somebody truly is the enemy, like in circumstances of war or a bad boss or an abusive relationship, that devil doesn't die in therapy. It still lives in there. So you can use that devil to put up a boundary to protect that child. In extreme circumstances, you can stand up for yourself really aggressively using that devil and put it on the other person who's threatening your psychological safety and health. And that's when you start, using sharp words with people, having a really sharp tongue, being very firm in what you have to say and standing up for yourself, maybe pushing back, and in extreme circumstances, being physical with that person. And that is the realm of the devil. The devil is not innately bad. The way that we use the devil is what makes us fear him or her and put him in stories where he is the bad guy. He's not the bad guy. The devil really is just there to protect us. And I think that'll be the end of this podcast today. You can use this information both for your therapy information and for yourself and to start questioning things. And you can start looking at mythology that way and old religions and old stories about the devil, and maybe starting to see the lies that we have placed on the devil based off of our own inner relationship with that part of ourselves. If you guys are interested in further reading, I would highly recommend taking a look at the work of Alexander Lowen. Alexander Lowen was the founder of the Bioenergetic Institute. This was the foundation of psychotherapy using the body. Lowen was a student of Freud, or sorry, of Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich studied under Freud. So I would recommend studying the books Betrayal of the Body, Fear of Life, and Narcissism. All of those can probably be found online on Amazon. And if you are looking for more information or some help with your own struggles, you can contact me on my website. The website is www.circusanimal.net. Now, until next time, my friends, my name is Logan Quinn. Stay healthy, stay healing.